Welcome to I Caught It on Audio. This is Ride or Die Episode 7, The White Stripes.
Hello and welcome to I Caught It on Audio, a 64 Tacos podcast. Today we're going to continue our Ride or Die series, and we're going to be talking about the band The White Stripes. One thing we kind of wanted to address out of the gate was we kind of thought it'd be a good idea, rather than harping on it the whole episode, just kind of talk about Meg White's drumming. And it's a little fortuitous that some troll on the internet just kind of threw Meg under the bus, and there was a ton of backlash over it. I'm not going to read the original tweet or even acknowledge who it was because he's kind of just a dick. But I kind of wanted to read Questlove's response to it. And that was, I try to leave troll views alone, but this right here is out of line AF. Actually, what is wrong with music is people choking the life out of music like an Instagram filter, trying to reach a high of music perfection that doesn't even serve the song or music. And that's kind of exactly where I am with the whole Meg White thing. No, she's not John Bonham. She's not Neil Peart. But she's Meg White, and she's exactly what the White Stripes needed for their drummer. She's a perfect complement to Jack White's kind of eccentric vocals and off-the-wall guitars, and I think she's perfect for the band. Do you guys have any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I've on various podcasts, if we have actual listeners out there, we've kind of ragged on her quite a bit, and it's always seems like the thing to do, or more or less. But after really pondering it and thinking about it, I think you're right. Like she's right for this type of music and for this style. And I think part of my criticism was also Jack White's insistence on sort of like using old tech and
Yeah.
like ancient recording technologies, and kind of ignoring and shunning the modern recording technologies.
Right.
And so what happens is that like they're, because of that, they would record a specific, in a lot of ways, the studio recordings are essentially live recordings. And so they capture like the essence of the live performance rather than like being nitpicky and going in there and trying to perfect things. And while I was annoyed with that when it originally I was exposed to it, I've come to actually kind of like it, because I like that sort of raw energy a bit better than some of these really overproduced, really extremely stylized recordings that you don't even really want to listen to multiple times for a lot of the pop music.
Right.
What's your take, Dan?
I mean, yeah, I'm roughly in the same ballpark. There's some times where the drumming is clearly out of time, and that always kind of mildly annoyed me, because it's just jarring to my ear. And those are things I also got used to. Like, there's definitely some out of time moments in Ball and Biscuit, which is my favorite White Stripes song.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, there are, and that's okay. And if you're going to complain about Meg White not being a great drummer, all you'd have to do to make her sort of legendary iconic drummer is give her more takes to get it right. Because they record their albums in a matter of, several songs a day, typically. So, I mean, if you're going to complain about that, well, feel free to complain about the occasional voice crack or missed fret that Jack White has, because they're in there
Absolutely.
too. But, people don't complain about that nearly as much. I'm sure if she was given enough time, she could play the exact same drum beats and not be out of time. But who really cares? In the end, it's really effective. The way she drums is really effective. You wouldn't want Neil Peart drumming with Jack White playing guitar anyway. Like, we've sort of like joked about how she's not a great drummer, and she's not a great technical drummer. That's true, but the sound is awesome. She really is able to sort of get that impact out of the drums. They sound alive. They don't sound sort of deadened and perfected, all that stuff. I think I think it works great. I mean, yes, part of me is like, could you guys have taken an extra 2 days and maybe gotten slightly better takes on all the stuff? But in the end, like you said, I would rather have you err towards it feels alive and played than err towards dead perfection and correction. And if you heard any of these recordings in a club listening to the band or in an arena live, you wouldn't even care. It wouldn't be a problem. You're just nitpicking something that is inherently going to be, flawed, if you want to call it flawed, because of how quickly it's recorded. So I think, yes, you can maybe note occasionally, well, the drums aren't perfect on that, or, well, missed that fret or whatever. That's fine if you want to do it, but to be like, oh gosh, if only there was a different drummer, the band would be great. Fuck you. That's shitty,
Yeah. No, the White Stripes are going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it is, and Meg White is definitely deserving of her seat there. Because of her role in the creation of the music of White Stripes. So on to the albums. So our first album is The White Stripes, right?
Yep.
Yes. 1999.
1999.
So quick question before we get into the nuts and bolts of it. When did you guys first experience the White Stripes? Roughly. When did you first find out about them?
I can tell you, it was the video for Fell in Love with a Girl. Okay. That was the first time I heard them.
For me, it would have been when they did a little residency on Conan. They played for like every like a whole week's worth of shows. And I have no idea when that was or what songs they did. I suppose I could look that up, but that would be when I first heard of them. And then I don't know that I noticed them again until many, many years later. So I couldn't tell you exactly, but I did not have very much knowledge of the White Stripes coming into this.
Okay.
How about you, Zach?
I was trying to think back to when it was, and I feel like it had to have been around the Fell in Love with a Girl time period, but honestly, my memories are only really kind of springing up with the Seven Nation Army, single and music video. So I kind of feel like Elephant was my introduction, my era.
Yeah, I would imagine it was Elephant.
Yeah, it's the first album I bought. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
Which one is Fell in Love with the Girl on?
That's on White Blood Cells, which is right before Elephant. Yep.
Yeah, 1 year earlier. Yep.
All right. So, the White Stripes, I'm pretty sure Jack White produced all of their albums, or was at least a co-producer. Is that right?
I believe so.
He's at least on this one.
You mean Rick Rubin didn't do these?
Can you imagine the Rick Rubin version?
Yeah. No, I love what Rick Rubin did for the Chili Peppers, but no, that's not necessary here.
That would not serve these songs very well, I don't think.
I think there would just be like lots of blood and crying, and then everybody would walk away and it would be over. There would be no album.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to derail.
I put this one on, and let's see. I think I had recognized One More Cup of Coffee, and I Fought Piranhas. I think those were the only two that I had recognized, and that was probably just because they had come up randomly on like a shuffle that Google Music put together or something. But I absolutely loved the St. James Infirmary cover of the was it Cab Calloway or whatever song. I love this version of it. I'm a fan of the original Cab Calloway version too. So I was really surprised when it was all Jack Whited out, because it's very, very different and yet oddly the same at the same time. Yeah. What are you guys' thoughts on this one?
Jimmy the Exploder is really the only song that I can remember. I didn't really spend a lot of time with these earlier albums, and going back through them. There's some good moments, like the I Fought Piranhas and St. James Infirmary Blues, but to me it felt very samey. It just felt like kind of, it's a White Stripes album, and if you want some White Stripes, put this one on. But beyond that, nothing was really kind of like, it felt very raw and very early, but it was still, interesting and good music. It was nothing really kind of like, slapping me across the face like, whoa, this is amazing,
Mm-hmm. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, it's definitely the rawest and most lo-fi of all their albums, which is saying something. I'm pretty sure it was recorded like on a 4-track, in a living room or something. I don't know, but
it might have just been on a reel to reel.
Yeah, I don't know where they recorded it, but it's really simplistic, and that's not a negative. I think that's really it's really enjoyable. There are a lot of songs, but none of them are very long, so it does end up sounding a bit samey, and there isn't as much variety as you find in later albums. But I couldn't say that there's a song on here I didn't like. I just don't feel like there were a bunch of incredible highs, at least not compared to the later albums. But I will say that I enjoyed listening to it, and if you're in the right mood, it's perfect, because it's so just straightforward, and the guitar sort of thrashing that really dirty guitar tone into like coherence is I don't know, it's kind of impressive how simple it is, but how well the songs work, because other than the drumming, which we won't spend too much time on obviously, but other than the drumming, everything's so wild and loose in the guitar and the vocals. But I actually think the drumming kind of anchors a lot of these songs, the sort of simplicity, which is one of the reasons why Meg White worked great for this album, and the band. So yeah, I liked it. Yep. I had heard it. I've listened to it a couple of times over the past 20 years, but I did enjoy sort of sitting with it, and I couldn't find a song I didn't like. I'll put it that way. I kind of enjoyed the Canon, the Sunhouse cover with the John the Revelator, in the middle there. That was kind of fun. Okay. That one jumped out a little bit, but really it was just maybe a bit samey, but enjoyable. I liked them all.
It's song ideas, really, is what it comes down to. None of these are really full songs quite yet. Like, it's a lot. It reminds me a lot of the Chili Peppers debut album, in that it's a bunch of just song ideas that haven't been fleshed out yet.
I like this a lot more than that. Yeah.
Only I really enjoyed this one.
That's an interesting point. It is similar in that it's a little unformed, but I feel like it works a lot better.
Well, it does. I mean, the style, the blues style, just makes it. Mm-hmm. It lends itself more to the super simplistic. Like, it's all you need. Let's move on to the next one. I don't know how you say this album.
I think Distill.
Distill?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, now we've got Jack White as the producer again. This was recorded just 2 years later, it looks like. And again, we've got a bunch of super short songs. What are we? Death Letter is the only one that's over. Well, no, there's two over 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But a lot of them come in under 2 minutes again.
Death Letter is by far my favorite one on this album, and I didn't actually hear it except for like a live recording, like some live video or something on YouTube, and I was just like, holy crap, that's awesome. And then I went and listened to the album version. I was like, this doesn't quite have the same energy as the live version, but it's still pretty dang good. And I think you get that a lot with them, is that their live performances are oftentimes, more polished and more refined and more interesting than their albums, which is kind of unique for a style of a band. But Hello Operator is another good one on there. It definitely has a little bit more variety and a little less of a raw flair than the first album, but not a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels like he switched amp settings and then
Yeah.
kind of stuck with that amp setting for the whole album again.
Yeah.
There's more piano, and I feel like there's more acoustic, and you get some Meg White singing a little bit for the first time. But yeah, this is just a
Which
small.
one does she sing on in this?
Your Southern Can Is Mine.
Oh,
The
yeah.
last track.
And it's I think this is like a very small sort of expansion and like improvement. Like it's a small step forward, fewer songs, so it has a little it has less of the issue with the sameness, I think, and there's also more variety, which helps. But yeah, most of them are short. They get in and they get out. I like this one too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just got the one single "Hello Operator," which I don't know that I ever heard on the radio, but I think the only song that I actually thumbs up on it was "Let's Build a Home." But
Yeah, that was a good one.
This would probably be my least favorite of the 6 albums, but I did enjoy it. I mean, I'll be honest. There's not a minute of the 4 hours and 4 to 5 hours of recordings that they've got here that I didn't like.
Yeah, at worst, it's perfectly fine. That's
Right.
kind of how I felt about it.
White Blood Cells. Now we've got some hits. We've got some stuff that's actually on the radio. We've actually got 4 singles from this one. We've got Hotel Yorba, Fell in Love with a Girl, Dead Leaves on the Dirty Ground, and We're Going to Be Friends. And this one, they definitely, it feels like there was more production, a little bit more production put into this, a little bit more time and care. Not a ton still, but it says here this is the first time the band recorded in a 24-track studio. So
yeah, you actually hear some guitar overdubs in this one too.
Right.
I think, and I
got
feel
more than
like
2 musicians required to play at the same time.
Yeah, well, not live, obviously, as they proved,
No.
but yeah. Yeah, I thought the highs on this one are the highest yet. But there are a few songs that mildly annoy me. Like, I Think I Smell the Rat. I don't know, that song I've always sort of endured rather than enjoyed.
I like that one.
I don't know what it is, but there's more songs where I'm indifferent on this one. But I do think that at its best, it's the best they've done yet. It's more, again, there's more variety. They're sprinkling in more of the sort of childlike acoustic little songs that you sort of find the rest of the way. Yeah, the production's a little bit better. Like especially on Dead Leaves and Dirty Ground, when he like kicks the amp into overdrive, it really sort of kicks ass. I like this one too. This was the first one that I had spent time with before we went through this for the last few weeks listening to it. I already knew this one reasonably well, but yeah, I think it's a little more uneven than the previous 2, but I still think it's the best of the first 3 because the highs are higher. What do you have, Zach?
Yeah, this is it's another good album. Definitely a bit more variety in the songwriting and the instrumentation and the production. Just like everything you guys have said. I love the "We're Going to Be Friends." It always reminds me of Napoleon Dynamite. And yeah, it's definitely got more songs that you can kind of sing along to, or kind of feel them out, but it's there's an unevenness about where it starts and where it goes. But I think they're definitely, there's this progression happening. Like you see the early rawness of like the 4-track recordings, and then as they kind of expand out and get a little bit more popular and kind of get a little bit more money, and they're starting to kind of come into their own and do some more interesting things. And this is definitely I would definitely want to put on this album more so than the first 2 albums. I think
there's more to get excited about, even if it is a little uneven for me. And I also want to mention, I remember Fell in Love with a Girl so well because the first time I heard the song was watching the Michel Gondry Lego video, like I kind of alluded to at the top. And this is the song that kind of convinced me that the White Stripes were worth listening to. And then I kind of didn't really dig into them. I didn't buy this album right away or anything, but they were in my mind as this is good. The other thing to mention here is we were just coming out of new metal, rap metal, all that late 90s stuff.
Yeah,
and this and the Strokes and bands like that were where I was starting to be like, okay, this is some new music that I can get a little more excited about. I don't have to dig as far into it to try to like it. It hits me like when I heard Fell in Love with a Girl, I was like, ooh, okay, I like this. All right, maybe some good music, newer music is coming out. And then I didn't really dig into them until I was actually, if we're ready to move on to Elephant.
I got one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Am I the only? Does anyone else think that the I Can't Wait on this one starts off exactly like Heart-Shaped Box?
I didn't note that when I listened to it, and now I can't picture the beginning of it in my head.
Next time you listen to it with that in mind, because at first I thought, they must have snuck a Nirvana song in on me somehow in this playlist. Maybe I accidentally clicked something wrong, and then no, Jack White starts singing. I'm like, okay, well, no, that's not Heart-Shaped Box, I guess. But
interesting.
That was my first thought when that song came on. But anyway, go on to Elephant.
Yes, Elephant came out, and it came out in what, 03?
03, yeah.
Yes.
02.
Elephant?
03.
Elephant's 03. White Blood Cells is 02. Or 01.
According to the Wikipedia,
yes,
it was released April 1st, 2003.
Nothing came out in 02.
Okay.
It was recorded in 02, but didn't come out till 03. I was I had sort of filed the White Stripes in the back of my head after I fell in love with the girl, and then I kind of forgot about them for a year or two, and then we were in Spain for school, a semester in Spain, and our friend Charles is from Detroit, and he had already been in on the White Stripes before this because they were a big underground Detroit band, obviously before they became popular nationwide. And his dad's was really into them, and his dad came out on spring break and brought the album with him. And this is where I met Charles, so I didn't know him before this, but we were driving around in a rented car that his dad had gotten in the sort of Spanish countryside, and he's like, "Oh, my dad brought this album. It's pretty sweet." And he popped it in, and he's like, "Oh, let me start you with this song." And he put on "There's No Home for You Here," and then I was like, "Yep, okay, I love the White Stripes," and we listened to that album for the rest of the week, and that's what got me really into the White Stripes was Elephant. Dave, you said you didn't really pick up on them at the time. It took a little more time for you, right?
Yeah, well, this is when music was just starting to disappear. When the White Stripes became big. So I totally missed this. And then I came back to it once I started making playlists on YouTube Music or Google Play Music. And then they would be suggested as additional songs to add. So I would hear it and I'm like, oh my goodness, where the hell did this band come from? How did I miss them? And then, that's how I came to it. And yeah, man, this Elephant album, I thumbs up every single track on it. It is phenomenal and probably one of my 10 best albums ever. Without a doubt. I mean, just from the moment Seven Nation Army comes on all the way through, Well, It's True That We Love One Another. I love every second of this album. Even that weird little thing where he's talking about squirrels.
Little acorns?
Little acorns. I love it.
It took me a while to come around to that one. But it gets funnier and funnier the more you listen to it.
Yeah, I didn't get it at first. I was like, what's going on right now?
Be like the squirrel girl. Yeah, that's pretty great. What about you, Zach? When did you I know we listened to this album a bunch, but I don't think I showed it to you. You showed it to me. When did you get into it?
I think after Seven Nation Army came out, I was like, well, I got to get that. And then I listened to it a ton, and it's definitely my favorite White Stripes album of all of them. And Ball and Biscuit is my favorite song. I love how long it is. I love how simplistic it is, but then it also just melts your face with the guitar solos.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Those exact words. The guitar just melts your face off.
Yeah, the pitch shifting, which he loves to use. He loves his whammy pitch shifter pedal. Mm-hmm. But the thing is like most people, when they're using pitch shifter stuff, they just can't make it work. But he can make it work, and pretty much every single time he uses it. And yeah, there's not a bad song on this album. It's great bangers from start to finish, and yeah, that's where I'm at with this one. I love Elephant. It's so great. And I was looking at the notes on Wikipedia. I didn't even know that I Just Don't Know What to Do With Myself is a Burt Bacharach song, apparently.
I remember wondering what that was doing on here, because I recognized the song, and that's one of those songs that's just floating around, even though I never deliberately listened to it, the old versions of it. But they somehow wrangle it into a White Stripes-y sounding song. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think with this album, they've taken their style, their raw essence, and they've refined it to the point where like they got it. There's no confusion about whether there's any little problems that are present here, like you were talking about Ball and Biscuit. It doesn't matter, because what shines is their ability to take that energy and put it out there as these really great songs, these really wonderful songs that you can connect to. And that's what I think this album does so well. And then things change as it goes forward.
Yeah, it's there's most of my favorite White Stripes songs are on this one. Like There's No Home for You Here, which it's so funny how far they've come to where there's like a Queen style, overdub vocal chorus in one of the songs, and it doesn't feel out of place. And I love Girl You Have No Faith in Medicine. Ball and Biscuit, like I said earlier, and you just said is my favorite. Interestingly too, is I don't think there were really any guitar solos on previous White Stripes albums, at least not.
There weren't complete songs. This is the first time they're actually writing complete, full, fleshed out songs.
Mm-hmm.
Like a full album. You've got a couple 2-minute numbers in here too, of course.
Yep.
But they're full songs with starts, beginnings, and ends, and solos, and multiple instruments, other than just drums and a guitar. And it's perfect. It's just perfect.
Yep, it's a great one. And there's also enough fun stuff, like It's True That We Love One Another, sort of like slightly tongue-in-cheek, playing around kind of stuff. Little Acorns, is another example. And I also feel like I Want to Be the Boy to Warm Your Mother's Heart. It's pretty funny,
That's so
lyrically. This is the first time they put it all together, and I think this is. I agree that this is the best one, certainly the best album to this point, and I would say pretty clearly the best, my favorite White Stripes album.
Even Seven Nation Army, with how big that song got, and still how big it is even to this day, it's just a really interesting. Like, it's such a simple guitar riff, and he uses again that whammy pedal pitched down this time, so it sounds more like a bass guitar, but it works so well. Like it's catchy, it's unique, it's interesting, like that's what draws me into these types of songs, and when they do that kind of thing, it's much more interesting than, like you guys were saying, the more like unfleshed out ideas of the earlier albums. There's nothing wrong with that. I still like listening to those earlier albums, but I really like it once they get to the punchline, once they've actually found their stride and they're doing something unique all the way to the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, this is their Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and their Throwing Copper. It's their amazing.
It's a leap forward.
Album. Yeah, where they made that big jump. They took that step and just made some incredible music.
Well, I think what another thing that's going on here is the sort of raw, loose, like careening off the track quality that's always been there. That is very deliberate, clearly, in both the style of the drumming and Jack White's guitar playing and singing is reined in and used a little more judiciously. And I don't know if they spent more time. They certainly weren't trying to get things perfect. You can. There are times where it's very loose, but it seems like there was also times where they sort of like Seven Nation Army is a remarkably polished song, considering it's a bass line, basically a bass line played on a guitar with power chords over it, and then just like complete caveman drumming the whole time. But it's incredibly polished. Even
cave woman drumming. Excuse me.
Well, listen, this is a patriarchy, so caveman means men and women. All right, so
you're using the gender neutral.
So yeah, I'm using the gender neutral. I'm sorry, cave X. Is that better? Like Latinx?
Let's just move on.
Listen. I want to support the patriarchy the sort of goal of this podcast. So this is just step one. But
the opinions reflected in this podcast have. Well, Dan's we'll just put it out there.
I think everyone knows that's a bit redundant, but and you're right, Zach. The interesting thing about Seven Nation Army is it's so overplayed. It's one of those songs you hear at sporting events, and it was just played to death. And yet, as I was listening to it, I wasn't sort of like bored by it. Listening to it for the 700th time, and I was like, this song still kind of kicks ass. It just works. This is definitely it all kind of came together, and they really nailed it on this one.
All right.
And then what happened?
Get behind me, Satan.
Get behind me, Satan. Now, do we think this is the White Stripes telling Satan that they need Satan's support here, and they want Satan to, get behind him and give, or do we think it's move out of the way, Satan, I got this, so you just stand back there?
So it's kind of a taking the Bible verse, right? Get thee behind me, Satan, which of course is sort of clearly like, I want you, I don't want you in front of me, I want you out of my way. I always think of it as like, come on, Satan, we're on the same team, let's do this together.
Yeah.
That's how I always thought of it, but yeah.
Now that said, what happened? I I don't dislike a single minute of this album, but we came off this amazing album. And personally for me, there's too much piano and otherness in this album.
Quite the variety. You've got marimba, you've got mandolin, you've got lots of piano. It's all kind of over the place. But I think that's you're seeing the artist try and find new avenues of expression, which actually makes a lot of sense. I really liked going through this progression of albums because you can see like sort of where they started and then where they finished up. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I think Jack White definitely knows, and Meg White too, but definitely knows that the Elephant was a peak, was a high point in the writing and in the production and the style. And so I think what he was trying to do with this was try and branch out and see what other things he could come up with. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything really bad here. Passive manipulation sometimes rubs me the wrong way with Meg's singing. But there's a lot of great songs on here, and it's still a fun album. I just don't think it hits quite as hard as Elephant. It doesn't have the same impact, the same emphasis, the same way that kind of takes you on a journey, and that's where I am with it. It's more variety. It's more interesting musically, but it's lacking something from Elephant.
Yeah, this strikes me as a kid A after OK Computer. Maybe not with all the Radiohead melancholy, the sort of how to distribute completeness of it all, but a deliberate attempt to just go in a different direction. And yes, I don't like this album as much, but I wouldn't have wanted Elephant 2. No, I don't think I would rather have a weird album that doesn't completely work.
Bad news for you.
Elephant 2, Electric Boogaloo. But yes, this is uneven, and there's a lot of marimba and piano. And some of the songs, while I both like and don't like Take is a really interesting idea for a song, and he's clearly speaking from the point of view of a famous person, he's talking to Rita Hayworth, but he's it's like, no matter what you do, it's never enough for people, right. And it's an interesting song, and I like the ideas behind it. I like it in theory, but like, do I love listening to it? Not so much. That said, like Blue Orchid, Little Ghost, Instinct Blues, Lonely and Ain't That Lonely Yet are some of my favorite White Stripes songs. So I think there's a lot of great stuff on here, and I think this is, you don't want to AC/DC it and just keep cranking out the same thing over and over again. I'd rather you try some interesting stuff, because I think for the sort of mental health of artists and writers, that's more beneficial in the long run. So I agree, it's a step down, but it's really more a step to the side. And that where they ended up on that second lane is not quite. I don't love it, but I still find a lot to like in this album. It's kind of right there with White Blood Cells for me, where it's like the stuff I like is great, and then there's some stuff where I'm like, this doesn't work as well, but still pretty good.
We've seen this trend a lot in this series, where you've got the Blue Album, and then you've got Pinkerton, and you've got Secret Samadhi after Throwing Copper, and you've got what was it, 1 Hot Minute after Blood Sugar Sex Magic, where they, you've got this album, this huge album with all kinds of success, and then the follow-up album doesn't quite feel right in the context of that first album. Mm-hmm. And in those cases, I really liked the second album, the step to the side, as you put it. Whereas this one, I don't dislike this album at all, but I don't, and maybe it's because I'm not listening to this one as a teenager, so I don't have that association with it. But I like Blue Orchid, and I like Little Ghost, and I like I'm Lonely But Ain't That Lonely Yet. Those three I liked. The rest, I don't need to listen to any of them again. And it'd be fine if I didn't. I would say, honestly, this is probably my least favorite of the 6, because it doesn't have that raw passion that the first few that are definitely flawed, have. That seems to be gone, and now it's just more experimentation than anything else. Again, I don't dislike
a lot of these albums we were citing when we're comparing it are albums that grew on me over time, and I got this album the week it came out, so I've had years with it, and it's grown on me. There's still songs I don't love, but this is an album that I still would totally put in and listen front to back. I don't feel like any of the weak spots are. I don't feel like, oh, if I never heard one of these songs again. Like, do I love Take 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 or Red Rain or Forever for Her Is Over for Me? No, I don't love them, but I don't want to. I still would like to hear them again. I think they're in the context of the album, they're still pretty good. So I'm a little more positive on it. What's your anything else you got on this, Zach, or you feel like you've said it?
Yeah, just one little quick anecdote. I remember when this album came out, I was super pumped for it because I was so enamored with Elephant, and then I listened to it once and I was like, what the heck? It just seems so different and so out of place. And then over time it did grow on me, and I do like it, and it's not going to be what I put on before Elephant, but I actually really like Take Take Take. That's one of my favorite ones from this, and My Doorbell. It's just such a ridiculous song about a doorbell, but I still enjoy it, and Blue Orchid is another one of those, like, it was extremely overproduced pop hit, and even though I've heard it a bunch of times, I still like listening to it. So yeah, I'm not in the same boat as you, Dave. I'm okay with this one, but I think what happened was I had really high expectations after Elephant, and this one didn't deliver in that same way, but it's still good. It's still a step to the side with its own uniqueness and interestingness.
Yeah, Blue Orchid sounds to me more like his later solo stuff in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
And the trick was that was the first single. I remember we were driving down 44th Street, Zach, and Blue Orchid came on, and when we listened to it for the first time, and we cranked it up, and we were like, "Yeah, face melting guitar!" And then that sort of also made us sort of like, and then there's like 4 songs that are like either acoustic, marimba, or piano bass, and we were like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
But like I said, this one grew on me. But I understand right after listening to Elephant, if you've never really listened to most of these songs, it would be disappointing, because that was my experience with it as well, and Zach's too. So it's totally understandable. But it grew on me too. I think it's pretty good. It's not at the bottom for me. I would say
it's a grower, not a shower album.
When I say it's my least favorite of these 6 albums, that's like being the Ringo Starr, the worst of the Beatles. You're still one of the fucking Beatles,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It means you hate it. I understand.
Yeah.
Let's get angry at each other. That one does not deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
All right, Icky Thump, the final album by the White Stripes.
This is a little bit of a return to more guitar-y stuff, more slightly more vintagey sounding White Stripes. I have spent very little time with this one, probably about as much as the first 2. I remember Icky Thump, the single, but I just didn't buy the album. I didn't spend time with it. I think this one's pretty good. There's a lot of variety. I found Conquest really interesting. It's strange, but interesting. I love the single Icky Thump. I think that's a great song. Rag and Bones, another highlight. And then it was interesting to hear like some bagpipes and stuff, like on Prickly Thorn to St. Andrews. I like this one quite a bit, actually. I'm a little mad at myself for not listening to it for these last 15 years or so.
Yeah, it was a nice return. Not to beat a metaphor to the ground, but this is kind of their Dolphin's Cry album.
Distance to Hear. Also known as Distance to Hear.
It is the Dolphin's Cry. All right.
Jesus on the dashboard. All right.
Yeah. Teenage Wasteland, baby.
It's not as deliberate, I don't think, as say the Green Album or the Distance to Hear.
That was very calculated. The Green Album. That was.
Oh yeah, the Green Album was.
Through math, we will sell Weezer albums.
Yeah, there was a spreadsheet involved with that one. But I really enjoyed this one. I love the first the first, three or four, yeah, through Conquest, I think is super solid. And then the rest of it's all good. Like I don't have I really like Catch Hell Blues towards the end there too.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was a good
Catch Hell
one.
Blues is
Super
great.
good. I
Bone
remember
Broke. I love Bone Broke.
The first time or two that I was listening through the whole playlist, when Infect and Cause ended, I was like, "That's it. I wanted more." You know, and I think it's maybe because Infect and Cause is a little bit of an odd closer.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. There's a ton of good songs. What do you got, Zach?
Yeah, it's not as experimental as Get Behind Me, Satan. But it still has, some of the variety of instrumentation, and yeah, it's a return to form, and I think it's different enough that I wouldn't call it like an Elephant 2, but it's solid from start to finish. It's it's got the good highs, the good lows, and it's really great. Yeah, Catch Hell Blues is amazing. Rag and Bone is amazing. It's a nice way to finish out their repertoire, their group of albums,
their discography.
Their
yes.
discography, I believe it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know what, they did what I feel like a lot of bands aren't brave enough to do, and they said that's enough. That's all the songs that that we need to write.
Yeah.
And then they had divorced by this time, obviously.
Yeah, they were divorced before they were famous.
Yeah,
I think like in 2000 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to accept that.
Is that the leaked new album from the White Stripes?
Yeah.
Or is that Get Behind Me Satan 2, Get Behind Me Santa?
Yes.
back to the piano.
Yeah. With some jingle bells thrown in. Yeah. No,
they do. Why haven't they done a Christmas album?
That would be good. Yeah,
that should be a return for them. No, I really, out of all the Ride or Dies we've done, I really liked this one the most, just because it's palatable. Like it's not this wall of albums like Red Hot Chili Peppers. Yeah. It's not this excessive amount of songs. It's a good amount.
It's still 85 songs, but it's only 4 hours, 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
Like the songs are all manageable. And the albums, a couple of them are what, 15 odd tracks, but that's 30 minutes runtime, you know?
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to put on the White Stripes, you can put on any one of these albums, or you could just throw together like a playlist or something that some algorithm comes up with, and you're going to be satisfied.
Absolutely.
That's where I think the difference comes in. Even with some of these songs that aren't quite as, high on the list as like Ball and Biscuit and stuff, you could still have a good time with them. And whereas like if you put on something from Chili Peppers, it's like, well, I need to curate that and make sure it's what I want, because there's a lot of crap early on and even later on that it's not worth it. It's just a waste of time.
Chili Peppers was a lot of garbage at the beginning and a lot of filler at the end. It's just
But that being said, I would definitely listen to any reunion album or Santa album or anything that they want to put out. If they did want to try and revisit, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, I think
I'm not going to say no.
I think it would. I don't see them, blowing it if they ever decided to come back. If Meg ever decided she wanted to be in a band again, which I suspect she doesn't, because I think that's the real reason. Is Meg was like, I'm done with this, which is fine,
based on the recent tweets that, Dave was mentioning earlier on in the podcast, it's like, I don't blame her, well, people are jerks.
And she was
in some ways we were jerks too, when some of the criticisms that we've had of her in the past.
And she suffered from anxiety and stuff too. So it's like, why would she's set for life financially based on Seven Nation Army alone, I think. So, I think I don't think she needs to make more music. She should just be able to disappear off the face of the earth and do whatever she wants with the rest of her life, and that's fine. Jack White's going to keep cranking out projects and solo albums, and that's awesome too. But yeah, it works. Sometimes the band should just end. And I think they had more in the tank possibly, but only if they were both excited about doing it, and they both were. Yeah. So great, that's not a problem.
And I'm much happier with this type of discography than some of these other bands that just keep going and going and going, like the Energizer Bunny. Yeah. And like we said before, it's like to them, do whatever you want. It's your choice. If you want to keep cranking out albums into your retirement, that's fine. You can do that. But that doesn't mean that I have to like it or want it. And with this, I liked what they did. And I would want it if they came out with more stuff.
I think it's pretty clear that everyone's favorite album is Elephant.
Yep.
That's obvious. I think you guys both said Ball and a Biscuit was your favorite song. Is that right?
Yes. I think so, yeah.
I think for me it's Seven Nation Army. Ball and a Biscuit is phenomenal, don't get me wrong. And the Hardest Button to Button, maybe, but I think it's Seven Nation Army. I love that one. I love that it's just, just this super simple melody that is just, it just kicks your butt with it. I love it. So yeah, unless anybody's got anything else, I think we're going to wrap it up there.
All right.
We've got 2 more in the works. We're going to do a revisit of the Smashing Pumpkins because they are coming out with a new album soon, right?
Yes.
A new opera.
33 songs.
Oh my God.
Triple album. Yeah. Get ready for that.
Then after that, we're going to revisit Weezer with their Seasons disc series,
which is a lot more than 33 songs, isn't it?
I don't think it is. I think they're all like
is it 4 EPs or is it 4 full albums?
I think it's 4 EPs. I think it's going to be roughly 30 odd songs. I'm not sure. I think it's all out. We just need to actually sit down and listen to them. But yeah, that's what's coming up. If you enjoyed this, wherever you found it, there's several more available to listen, and we've got more planned coming up soon. So we'll see you then.
I caught it on audio.